How's it going, Crusaders? Welcome back to another sermon. Today, I don't really know how to describe this one, to be honest, because I know I've said it many, many times in previous sermons, so I don't want to sound like a broken record. But at the same time, this is one that, I'm not sure you're going to find many more people who can relate to today's subject better than me. Today we're checking out stress, guys, and I say that you can't find many people better than me when it comes to this subject, but I also know that this plays a part in every single person's life, regardless of financial standpoints or not. It's something that we all deal with, plain and simple. Thing is, some more than others, and some a lot more than others. So let's go ahead and jump into it, guys. Today is a first for a couple different reasons. A little spoiler, every single verse that we're checking out today, as always, we check out 3 Bible verses. Every single verse of today's video will be in Psalms. And it's very ironic because the Bible studies that we're doing at church, we're actually checking out Psalms right now. So, as always, just a little coincidence from God. So let's go ahead and get started, guys. So stress. This is a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or very demanding circumstances. It just sounds like a regular day in the life of a human, pretty much. You know what I mean? This is something we all face. This is something that is a daily part of my life, and I'm sure it is a daily part of your life as well. I've almost found comfort in being overwhelmed and stressed, as it's been a part of my life for so long. And once again, I'm sure that's something that most of you all can relate to as well. I work at the busiest restaurant in town, and in the moment it seems very overwhelming. It seems very stressful, and it seems like it's just too much. But and I say this very not very confidently, I guess you can say, because it doesn't happen often, but I'm just trying to use it as an example. So you take that and you look at what a slow day is like at the restaurant, and it's almost more stressful than a busy day, because you get so used to being overwhelmed and stressed and overworked. When it slows down, you kind of feel more stressed than you did when it's extremely busy. You kind of find comfort in the chaos, and I'm sure that goes along with a lot of people's jobs out there as well, not just mine, but just wanted to use that as an example. So there's not a section or time in my life that doesn't involve stress. I mean, it doesn't even just come down to work, just in general. And I'm sure many of you could say or agree with that as well. Just look at the world today. It's just look at the world in the past 10 years, to be honest. As a generation, we have more stress-bearing situations, trials, and problems than the last 100 years has had to face. And I'll argue that too, if that's something that you don't agree with. Our government uses it as a tactic to keep us controlled, in my opinion. The prices of things have went up 3 to 5 times higher than what our parents had to pay, but wages are still the same. COVID, floods, fires, the cost to just exist is insanity. And I'm going to say this a lot this video, but I'm sure a lot of people can agree with that. You know, stressful events, work, family problems, finances, health, literally just everyday life is always filled with stress, and it's almost like we can never escape it, we can't get away from it, and it constantly drags us down. Uh, so if we do eventually realize that we have to accept it in our lives, the question is there any way to get through it easier? And if you want to look at it by what can you do, the answer would be no. No, there's not. But there is a Savior named Jesus Christ who would love to help Crusaders. And that's why we're going to check out 3 Bible verses today, which, very coincidental, comes all from Psalms. So, firstly, we're going to check out Psalms 9:10. And we are just going to be checking out one verse or a couple of verses, but I want to give a backstory to these Psalms to really help us understand. Psalms is a very important book. It was, songs wrote by these people, but through translations and just the way we speak compared to how they speak, it's kind of lost its musical tone over time, and now it's just something that we can really look at and study and use it as a part of our life, how to help, to be honest. So that's why I want to give a little backstory to these Psalms. So we're going to check out firstly Psalms 9 verse 10. And they that know thy name will put their trust in thee, for thou, Lord, hast not forsaken them that seek thee. And I don't even have this wrote down. This is just off the top of the dome. I just want to say, looking at that verse, there's so many times we're stressed and we're dealing with stuff, and I've been saying this all year, but it seems like God has abandoned us in that moment. But what you got to understand is that's the moment when God is telling you, begging you, knocking on the door to have you call out to Him. That's just a way that He's trying to get to you, Crusaders, and that's what we have to understand. So, little backstory to Psalm, and this goes along with number 10 too, but Psalms 9 and 10, taken together, form the first of acrostic Psalms. Through the 38 verses are a very irregular representation of the Hebrew alphabet of 22 letters. So, you look at the word marvelous, and it's in a different verse, but I still want to add this in here because it does go along with Psalms 9. So this is a adjective used in the Old Testament to describe the supernatural, marvelous, which is very interesting. So David looks on God's deliverance and praises Him for it. So after inviting the believing community to join in His praise, which is in verses 11 through 18, but David prays for God's rule to be established over wicked men, and that is verses 19 through 20. It's easy to take your stress and your problems and use it against God and use it as a excuse, because that's exactly what it is. Use it as an excuse not to turn to God, a reason to stray away from Him, and a reason to not believe in Him because you're going through stuff. But that is the exact reason why in that time, in that moment, and in that situation, why you should be calling out to God, why you should be asking Him to be there for you in that moment. So, guys, that was the first Psalm I want to check out. Now we're going to jump over to our next Psalm. And this is coming from Psalm 73:26. Actually, one more thing I want to add in there, guys. So, the most important thing we have to understand is that every time we experience stress, I know I keep saying this all year, but every time we experience stress, that's Jesus asking us to call out to Him, Crusaders. So just take that away from Psalm 9. That's the main thing I want you to take away from it. So now we're going to check out Psalm 73:26. As I said, I'm going to say the verse, but then I also want to add a little backstory about Psalm 73. My flesh and my heart faileth. But God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. So this psalm is another dealing with the problem of prosperity of the wicked, kind of going along what we just talked about. Unlike Psalm 37, however, it does not emphasize the brevity of that prosperity. The author observes that sometimes the bounty achieved by the wicked does in fact last throughout life. He emphasizes every believer's need to test his own personal relationship with God. That alone provides the ultimate satisfaction available to the believer who witnesses the influence of the wicked. So this psalm contains two key parts. First, the psalmist describes the problem of the wicked's prosperity. Not only is it an objective fact, but it almost caused him to stumble spiritually and lose his faith. The second part, and that's kind of going along with what I just talked about, people use their stress, problems, and all these things as a way to turn away from God. The second part of the psalm is prompted by the content of verse 17. Not until the psalmist entered God's sanctuary and received a divine perspective on the wicked's prosperity did he find an answer to the problem. He saw the destiny of the wicked. Therefore he repented of his foolishness and found his happiness solely in a warm and growing relationship with God. The point of the psalm is driven home even more dramatically when remembering that the author was a spiritual man who grew up with deeply religious training. So, like I said, I've said this 100 times this year, but this is the absolute perfect sermon to mention it again. We all go through stress constantly, but at the same time, there is also plenty of occasions where we experience happiness, where things are going good, where we feel untouchable, unstoppable, and undeniably amazing. And, I hope that I'm not just speaking for myself in that, but sometimes things do go good, Crusaders. Whether we even notice it or not. And what do most of us do in those instances? We stop praying, we stop calling out to God, and it almost in that time feels like we don't need God. I feel like that's why a lot of us go through so much, because God is going to push you to a limit to where at some point you're not going to be able to take it anymore. You're going to see how everything you've done to make your life better has failed. And every time you try to get through life on your own, there has to be a struggle after struggle after struggle. And hopefully when that time comes, you make the same decision I made and humble yourself before Jesus Christ and look at yourself in the mirror and say, I can't do this on my own. Please come into my heart, into my mind, and into my life and get me through this stress in your holy name. Crusaders, when we're going through something stressful, that is God saying, let me help you. Call out to me. And, that's kind of the whole point of this video. And I'm going to say this on each verse. That's the point of stress. Stress is God saying, it's time for you to talk to me. It's time for you to call out to me. It's time to build the relationship with me. If you're not going to do it when you're happy, I'm going to make it to where you have to call out to me. So that's something to think about. And I know I've been talking about it all year, but this is the perfect sermon to really dive into it and discuss it. So finally, Crusaders, we're going to check out Psalm 91. And, I just realized that I haven't added in the title of these verses. So let's do that real quick now that we're almost done with the video. So Psalm 9, our first Bible verse, the title of that was Praise for God's Judgment. The second one that we just read was Prosperity of the Wicked. That should have been kind of self-explanatory because that's what we talked about. But finally, Crusaders, we're going to check out Psalm 91, verses 7 through 10. Title of the verses, The Secret Place of the Most High. So, As I said, there's only 3 verses we're going to be checking out, but I do want to add in a little backstory to Psalm 91 just to really see what we're diving into and see what we're really talking about. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right side, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked, because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. So, the key word to describe this psalm is security. There are 2 distinctive voices in the psalm, and each speak to the trusting believer in the Lord. The first voice assures the faithful of God's protection. The second voice is that of the Lord himself, who likewise pledges his watch care, which is an important caution is necessary here. The great promise of these verses should not be taken in an absolute sense. One may not be presumptuous in applying them. Satan has already suggested that. Rather, the believer must recall the deliverance that still has to be the will of God, and that even if harm should come, he can still be secure. And that goes right along with what we're talking about. Even if bad times come, if stressful time comes, if there comes a time where you feel like you can't do it anymore, there is security, there is a promise, and there is hope in a man named Jesus Christ who wants to help you out through all of that. All you have to do is what I've been talking about this entire sermon, and that is call out to him. And I truly feel like that is why we have stress and anxiety and anxiousness and depression and everything that we've really talked about in 2024. It is all reasons why and excuses why we need to be calling out to Jesus. Like I said, guys, when things are going good, it feels like I don't need God today. Everything's going good, but thanks for trying to talk to me. I really do feel like that's why we go through things, is because we're not giving enough time to God. So, plain and simple, life is stressful for everyone, Crusaders. There is nothing easy about this life, and stress is one of the toughest things we face. But, at the end of the day, there is a Savior named Jesus Christ that wants to help you through every single bit of it. All you have to do is give your life to him the same way he did for you. You want to talk about stress and all the things that you go through and all the things that you have to face and all the things you don't think that you're going to make it through. And then look at all of that in the eyes of Jesus and what he had to go through, what he had to face, and what he had to think that he couldn't get through. And just realize that he did it all for us as a way to one day help us get through that, Crusaders. And I mean that with all my heart. And I pray that this video will help somebody out, help you understand stress a little bit better, and made it easier for you to get through, and really gave you a reason to call out to God because of this subject. As I've been saying for the entirety of 2024, don't let stress ruin your day when it's just a way to call out to God to improve that day, Crusaders. So, guys, Monday I am, like I said, going to Gatlinburg. I said I was going to make a Bible study and then go, but what I think I'm going to do is I'm probably just going to go to Gatlinburg, and then when I get back, just do a short video of the Bible study. Like I said, it's not really a Bible study, it's just us going over the verse, looking at the Bible verse of the week, and then just simply doing my little question for the Crusaders. It's going to be a super short, sweet video, but I'll probably just wait until after Gatlinburg to make that video. That way I can just kind of give an update, let you all know how it went, and if there was any issues that came about doing so. So, Crusaders, that's it for today. I hope you all enjoyed the sermon, and I will catch you all Monday for the Bible study. Thanks, Crusaders.